Welcome, beautiful teachers, to another Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. If we haven't met before, my name is Nicola Canton and I am the creator of vibrantmusicteaching.com, which is a resource site for music teachers. I'm thrilled to be here with you today to talk about fresh starts and resets in our studio as we head into a new academic year for many of us here in September. But if you're watching this later, there's no reason you can't reset right now, so stay tuned for some of the things you might want to consider rethinking or resetting no matter when you're watching this video. In general, on this channel, we post lots of different teaching tutorials and ideas. So if you're new here, make sure to hit the like button so that YouTube recommends more of our videos to you, and subscribe to the channel as well, of course. So, without further ado, let's dive into our music teacher news. So, my personal news is that I just started teaching. If many of you are in the same boat, let me know in the chat. I had my first week back of teaching. It was intense. It always is, right? Do any of you, others of you, get to the end of the first week of teaching and can barely speak like me today, or just feel completely zonked? Like, I get to the end of it and I'm like, what? I do this all year? No, I can't have done this for the whole of last year. And then after the second or third week, you're like, all right, this is okay. I can do this. I can enjoy all my lessons. This isn't so intense. But the first week back, right, it's so much. We have new students as well. I have new students, or one new student to me this year, and one completely new to the studio, which is actually kind of unusual for me because my students are so sticky that I hardly ever have new students anymore. So it's always fun to get someone new through the door, but it gives you fresh insight into what a first lesson is like and everything. So I like that experience to come back around. So let me know whether you have new students at this time of year, or whether everyone continued and your timetable is packed, or you're searching for new students. Let us know how things are going for you. I wanted to let you know about 2 upcoming masterclasses as well, one of which isn't till October, but I've been using the ideas from it last week in my teaching. So it's coming up in October, and it's going to be with Christopher Oyle. These are both guest masterclasses, which is super fun. So we're bringing on a special guest. So Christopher Oyle is going to be sharing his story-based improvisation composing framework, and I've been using it for the past week in my teaching and getting more and more excited about sharing that masterclass with you guys. So really looking forward to that one. But the one that's coming up really soon is with Samantha Coates, and it's called Baking and Biking. And this was really all Sam's idea. I mean, this was totally her. She came to me and she said she had seen my book, Practice Pie, and she had an analogy that kind of worked a similar way for explaining practice to parents, and could we bring them together? So it's a really unusual one, and it's going to be so much fun. I mean, Samantha Coates is just, oh, she's the best. She's awesome. If you've ever seen her present before, you'll know. But I'm really excited to do that with her, and we're going to be hosting it at VMT. And it's just going to be fantastic. So I hope you'll sign up for that one. The URL again for that is here, vibrantmusicteaching.com/bike. Not bake, bike. I probably should have done both on that one. Anyway, so that is what's going on and coming up really soon. But the latest news, of course, since it's September now, and it wasn't last week when I saw you, is that we have new games. So I'm going to give you a quick tour around those before we dive into our main topic of today. Okay. Okay, maybe not. There's some weird stuff going on today, so I'm just going to talk you through them briefly, and you can check them out in the library. If you remember, we had Squirreled Away, which is a brand new game for a mix of levels, and the thing I really love about this is that it works for really new beginners. So the first level just gives you the name of the landmark note. So it just says middle C or treble G or whatever, and the student needs to find it on the piano. So that's if they're not on the staff yet, but they're just getting familiar with the landmark names. And then it goes to landmark notes and it progresses from there. But it means that you can use it side by side with like a really new student and someone who's further along. So great for siblings, great for group workshops you're doing this time of year, all that kind of thing. And then we have our next in the series of our around the world tour that I've been doing. This is Osaka Castle Climb. So this is going to be our Japanese one. And it's just a great note naming game, really, really super fun. And then we have Planet Pedal. And I'll tell you, this was a concept idea like for what to cover from our content assistant, Melissa. And when she said it, I was like, you're right. But I can't believe you're right. We don't have a game to work on pedaling. Like, how does that not exist? So I created Planet Pedal. I'm really excited for you guys to see what you think of that one. And then we have our new edition of Rhythm Railroad, which is level 3 now. So we're on to the 3rd level. I love this so much. It's so much fun. I can't get enough of it. And my students can't either. So it's you do different actions with the rhythms and there's backing tracks and it's just so much fun. Let me know if you've tried it in the comments. It's my current favorite thing to do. And then we have Breath of 5. So Breath of 5 was something I tried as a little experiment last year, like in March I think I released it, and it was just a rough video. I just took my phone and recorded it. I had this idea. I put it up for members in the forums and just said, hey, if you want to use it while it's like this, cool. That's great, but if you want to wait until it's more official, that's fine too, but I just want to put it up to see what you think. And several members tried it at that stage, and now it's in its more polished version. So what Breath of 5 is it's a series of videos. So you use one, but you progress from version 1 to 2 to 3. So version 1, I talk through every step, and then version 2, I give less detail, and version 3, less still in terms of directions. But what am I directing them to do? Well, version 1, and all of them really, it's a progression of simple getting situated at the piano kind of routine. So what it guides students to do is they sit down at the piano, then they're planting their right foot on the ground, left foot on the ground, hand on the piano, other hand on the piano, and then they take their hands off and put them back in their lap. And each time they're breathing for a number of counts. So they're breathing up to 3, and then up to 4, and then up to 5. That's why it's called Breath of 5. And what I'm doing here is, yes, getting them used to good posture and all that kind of thing, but also slowing down their breathing. And what I'm training them to do, and I hope you'll go along the ride with me, is to sit down at the piano and feel relaxed. Not to think of students as dog training, but if you've ever heard of Pavlov's bell, I think that's the right name. Anyway, it's where the dog starts salivating because they hear the bell, because they usually are fed after the bell, right? So this is kind of that. It's we train ourselves so much to sit down and breathe slower and slower and slower, right? And get mindful about our posture, that becomes instinct. That when we sit down at the piano, we associate that with breathing slower and therefore being more relaxed, not more stressed. And the more we do this, the more magic it's going to be. So I hope you'll get into that routine with me. That's what we're doing with all students at my studio. We're starting with version 1, and then we will progress to the ones where I speak less, so they don't have to listen to me, and so they start to internalize that pattern and just do it by themselves eventually. Okay, so those are the 5 new games. Now, next we're going to go into our main topic. So we're going to start by looking at life balance. This is the first thing that I think you might like to reset at this time of year. let me know if your life is feeling a little off balance. I know it is for many of us, right? So I want you to ask yourself, where is my energy lagging? Like when I do this activity, my energy isn't as good. Or where is it that I feel my focus is being pulled away from too much? Or what am I spending too much time doing? I would love your thoughts on that, because I think any new period, any new year, new time, new start is a great time to look at this analytically, to look at everything you're doing and say, is there something that needs to be recalibrated here? What do I need to change in order to feel balanced in my life? Maybe you're doing too much teaching. Maybe you're not doing enough teaching. I doubt that's true for most of you. Maybe you're doing too much exercise, not enough exercise. Maybe you're moving too much and you need to sit more, or the opposite, right? What is it that doesn't feel quite right in your life right now? The next question about your resetting and recharging and recalibrating is your relationships. This might sound a bit heavy, but what I specifically want you to think about, you can think about relationships in general, but I was specifically thinking of students. You know, students spend years and years with us, and so they change over time and we change. And sometimes we can get off kilter in how we're dealing with them. So if you have a student that you were finding frustrating last year, I want you to take a moment to think about how you could alter that relationship and your weekly pattern with them. What could you do to change how you talk to them or how they relate to you? Sometimes students, turn into teenagers. Almost always they turn into teenagers, but sometimes they stay with us as they turn into teenagers. And so we need to adapt and we need to change how we facilitate their learning and how we move with them and how we train them, but also how we set goals together and the scope of our goals. Sometimes younger students can actually handle bigger goals, and your student is now, as several of mine were last year, and again this year, I'm going through one of those stages in my studio. They went into what we call first year here, which is the start of secondary school or high school. And so a lot of things change when you do that. You have, on average, like an hour and a half extra of school every day. So you've got less time. You're expected to do a whole lot more homework. I mean, I remember the shock myself. Like, oh, I thought I had a lot of homework. This is real now. Not just homework, but study. And really up until that point, you haven't done a ton of proper study. And now you have to learn how to do that, right? And there's just so much going on at this time of year. So for some of those students, for many of them really, in that first year, I just have to let go a little bit and let it get a bit slower and be okay with that, To just say, right, this year, it's about getting them through it with lots of enthusiasm about music and maybe not a lot of progress. I'm not saying write them off, but sometimes we have to adjust. So are there any of your students where you need to adjust your relationship right now? Okay. Just checking the tech there. What about your batteries? Do you need to recharge your own batteries? What do you think? Are you taking enough time to play music yourself? Do you need a new hobby outside of teaching? Outside of music, I should say. Teaching is not your hobby. Outside of music, right? Maybe all your hobbies are musical and you need something outside of that. Or maybe you need a new musical hobby that is not your primary instrument. Maybe you need to take up cello or a choir. Some of these things are difficult right now, but you can figure out a way to do it if you figure out first what you need. But maybe it needs to be knitting or gymnastics. I don't know. It could be anything. What about breaks? Are you taking enough time for breaks so that you can actually recharge during the day? A big change I made several years ago was to make a rule for myself over the minimum breaks in my day. So for me, and this will not be the same for you, but for me, my maximum is 2 hours or 3 students, whichever comes first. So that has evolved over time as well. And the minimum break length is not quite as long for me. Like 15 minutes is fine. But I need some time at that periodic interval to just reset my brain, make sure I've let go of anything that went wrong in the last lesson, move on to the next lesson, that kind of thing. And yeah, go to the bathroom and have a snack if you need it. So tell me if you're taking enough time for breaks. This is a big one for many teachers. If you are taking enough time for breaks, maybe you're not using them to their best effect. So if you find your energy is really dipping at certain times of the day, maybe the thing you need to rethink is your snacks or your meal routines. Maybe the meal you're eating right before teaching is too big because you're trying to get through it, or maybe it's not big enough and you run out of fuel, or maybe you don't have enough healthy snacks prepared so you reach for, I don't know, I don't want to give an example because different things are healthy to different people, but you reach for something that doesn't nourish you and doesn't help you get through the rest of the day, but it's just the only thing you had there. So the thing you need to recalibrate is how you prepare for that situation, right? How do you have snacks on hand that actually work for you? Snacks are important, guys. Seriously. Or what about exercise routines? Maybe you don't make enough time for exercise in your day, and that's causing you to feel a lower level of batteries or energy for your teaching. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you took on a triathlon project and you just don't have the energy for it, and you're pushing yourself too hard. More exercise is not always better for you, despite what some of society might want you to think, right? It's not always healthy to run as much as possible. So maybe you're doing too much. The last area I want you to look at recharging or refreshing is your structure in your lessons. So, is there anything that you had trouble including in your lessons last year? Is there anything that you need to put first in your lessons because otherwise it won't fit in? That's always my default strategy, and it's so simple, as are many things. But sometimes you just need to do one thing, right? So if you think that sounds overly simplistic, maybe it is, but it works for me. If there's something I can't fit in, whether that's improvisation or a technique warm-up or whatever it is, if I've been struggling to prioritize it, but I know I really want to, I just do it first in the lesson. That's my simple solution for you. So what is it that you need to put first in your lessons, literally and in terms of priority? I would love to hear what it is that you feel has been lacking for you. And let's think about that structure, because I feel like we go in cycles with this. Sometimes we need more routine and more structure to get things done. And sometimes we need more randomness. We've gotten too prescriptive in how we formulate our lessons. Like it always goes scales, practice pieces, new pieces, improv, the end. And it's feeling stale. And even if it's not feeling stale to your students, it soon will feel stale to them if it feels stale to you. So sometimes you need to rein it in and structure it more. And sometimes you need less. So which one is it right now? I don't know, only you can say. Here are some suggestions on things that might be a fresh start, a fresh beginning to each lesson for you. How about Breath of 5? If you're a member, you can download the video, so you can even put it in your students' Tanara or their Google Drive or whatever. You can share it with your personal students. So it's super handy to use. Maybe that's a great fit for you. That little mindfulness check-in. Or maybe improvisation. Maybe you've still been struggling to include improvisation in your lessons at all. So you want to put that first. Just start with 2 minutes of improv with every lesson, no questions. Even adults, even 3-year-olds. Yes, all of them. Or maybe you start with Rhythm Railroad. Maybe your students' rhythm kind of fell off the bandwagon last year. Maybe they did a lot of online lessons and you found it much more challenging to teach rhythm in that format. Well, whether you're online or offline, you can do Rhythm Railroad. We have it in a slides format. So it goes on screen, you can share it, and you can also share it on a screen in your studio. That's the way I do it right now. So maybe that's what you need to prioritize. Or maybe it's Reading Railroad, which is our sight reading version that also comes with backing tracks and also has a digital version that you can screen share. Or maybe it's self-reflection. Maybe you want your students to start by making some notes or telling you something about their practice that week. Maybe you think they need to become more independent and think through how they've been getting on with various things themselves more, especially if you have older students or students who are regressing from like a beginner to an intermediate level. Maybe that is the new fresh start for you. Whatever you choose, know that you weren't doing it wrong before. It's something we all need to revisit again and again. That's why I talk about life balance and fresh starts rather than fixing broken things or work-life balance, which puts the two at odds with each other. This is about taking a moment to reset things so that you feel more centered. More centered. Not perfectly centered, it's never perfect, but more so. Alright, so because of some of the tech glitches, I don't think I've seen any random questions come through. Nope. So if you do have any, you can add them in now, but I'm just going to check in with the chat in general. Morgan said, I like my 45-minute lesson standard because I can plan breaks easier. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily dependent on the 45 minutes, right? I think you can start lessons anytime. Some of mine start at like 5 to something or whatever. And I just let parents deal with the fact that I'm so precise. They can laugh at me if they like, but it works, right? So whatever lesson format you're using, make sure you put in those breaks. Nice, lovely to hear how you're all doing at the moment and where you're up to with your teaching. Okay, so I think this is going to be a shorter show today since we had the tech troubles and we don't have a ton of questions, but it was great to hang out with all of you. Oh, hang on, too quick. Here's Alice. I'm excited to start using the landmark note approach to learning this term, so as well as squirreled away, what else do you recommend? Okay, so it depends what we mean by starting to use the landmark note approach. If we're talking about students who have never learned notes and you're starting with them from scratch, I think squirreled away, progressing through the various levels would actually be a great place to start. Or if you want to go more comprehensive, if you start students in the Tiny Finger Takeoff or Piano Power Booster plans, Alice, then those will take you through a lot of different landmark note activities as well. And those can be found in the courses section on Vibrant Music Teaching. Now, if we're talking about transitioning a lot of students over, that's a bigger question and isn't always necessary. I think sometimes we see something as being the best way and we go after it, even though our students were doing okay the other way and we've already passed that stage. So it depends on the students, but if they can already name notes okay, or they've been using another method, it's not always a great idea to change that. But Just wanted to put that caveat in there. Okay, yes. Thank you all so much for joining me. Sorry about that clap. That probably came through annoyingly. We will figure out the tech for next time and everything should run a bit smoother. But in the meantime, I hope you'll sign up for the masterclass. That is at vibrantmusicteaching.com/bike. I'm really looking forward to that one. And make sure you come along to our birthday bash, which is in just 2 weeks as well. And it's on this show right here. And let me know if you want to be on it, because I want to feature people and I want to give you prizes for doing that. So just email me if you're up for coming on that special show. And thank you all so much again for coming today. See you next time.